As I finished reading, I noticed Leslie standing on the kitchen island, refilling her glass. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I will," I replied. She nodded and returned with a bottle and a filled glass. Sitting down next to me, she filled my glass and looked at me with her doe eyes. "So, Rick, what should we do?" "We won't do anything right now," I told Leslie in a firm tone. "You and Marcy have been planning this little plot for me for 2 weeks now, and it's only tonight that I find out about it. And from what you're telling me, I get the impression that she's been plotting something on the side for a long time. Am I right?" "I think so," she said, lowering her head. It was obvious that she was not used to the fact that someone did not immediately succumb to her feminine charms, of which she had many. If I were a single man, I'd jump around like crazy. But I don't like being used, especially not by someone I've loved for most of my adult life. And I told her this without mincing words. "You said to yourself that it was something she wanted to do to ease her conscience," I said. "Or it could have been something else. Obviously, you and her planned this whole thing behind my back. She even told you what wine to buy me. The problem is, I don't like being used like that." I think I understand how you might feel," she said quietly. "So I guess this means nothing will happen between us." "Not today. Basically, that means I have a lot to think about and a lot to consider before I make any drastic decisions," I said. I wanted her to think that something could happen. I figured this would make her more open to answering my questions. Now I need information. There were too many things about this situation that I was not happy with. There is a saying that is well known to the military: know your enemy. I hated thinking about Marcy as an enemy, but in my mind she was the first to shed blood, and I was determined to win, at any cost. "So," Leslie said, "can I count on you for dinner in a day or two?" "I don't know, Leslie," I said. "I'm not in the mood for company right now. I have a lot of things to sort out. We'll see." "Okay," she said quietly. "Just know that I will always be available to you." "I appreciate it, Leslie," I said. "Good night, and thanks for the wine," I added, standing up. She understood this as a signal to leave, which she did. I admired her ass when she left. I couldn't resist. I'm a healthy, red-blooded man. After she left, I picked up Marcy's letter and read it again. It's amazing what you can see when you take the time to analyze a letter like this. First, I couldn't help but notice the venom when she wrote about Deirdre Keel, the CIA agent I worked with in Iraq. Marcy even admitted that she wasn't 100% sure that Dieter and I had sex, but still called her a bitch. Then, just a few paragraphs later, she basically demands that I sleep with Leslie. How could she go from one extreme to the other in such a short time? It boggles my mind. Yes, Dieter and I did hook up once in Iraq, but it was in the heat of the moment. This happened right after we survived the ambush. This was the only time we got mixed up, and we certainly didn't plan it for weeks like Marcy apparently did with Trey and Leslie. I remembered that I had mixed feelings then. On the one hand, I felt guilty for cheating on my wife, but on the other hand, I already suspected that Marcy was cheating on me, so I believed that one good deed deserves another. I also wondered why Marcy didn't want me to pick her up at the airport when she returned. I could understand that she was worried that I might become violent, but I had never given her a reason to do so in the past. And why did she ask me to meet her in the lobby of the Ambassador Hotel? Why not go straight home? Unless... Then it dawned on me. Was she really that insidious? Of course, the fact that she had been planning this for weeks behind my back answered that question. But what's really going on? I turned and looked around the living room, looking for something that didn't belong, anything that could be a surveillance device, like a camera or microphone. I looked at the smoke detector. Could there be a camera installed there? I decided to make a couple of calls, but I didn't want to make them inside in case I was being overheard. I grabbed Marcy's schedule, walked out the door, and sat down in the rocking chair I had set up a while ago. Marcy knows I'm a consultant, but what she doesn't know is that I'm actually a senior security consultant at Acme Global, a huge corporation with interests and offices all over the world. My job is to ensure the safety of these offices and the safety of our employees. This means that I have contacts all over the world that I can turn to if I need anything. My first call was to Alan Williams, the best technician in my department. He wasn't just good, he was the best at what he did. "Williams," he said, answering the phone. "Alan, this is Rick," I said. "How are you?" "It's okay, boss," he said. "But I have a feeling you didn't just call to see how I was doing." "No, it's not easy," I said. "I need your expertise." I briefly told him what happened and expressed my concerns. "Sorry to hear about you and Marcy, Rick," he said. "I understand your concerns. You know what? Give me about 45 minutes to collect the equipment and I'll be with you." "Thank you, Alan," I said. "I appreciate it." We ended the call, and I scrolled through my contacts to find the second number. After I found it, I typed it. "Hello, Senor Rick," said a cheerful male voice on the other end of the line. "Ernesto, how are you, my friend?" I asked. Ernesto Trujillo was my man in South America, and he worked out of our office in Wait For It, Bogota, the same city where Marcy and her lover or lovers were now located. I have dealt with Ernesto before and have found him to be one of the most reliable and trusted people I have ever known. "Oh, things are good, boss," he said. "I didn't expect to hear from you today. How can I help you?" I briefed him on what happened, as I did with Alan. "Damn," he said when I finished. "I'm sorry to hear that, my friend. I take it you need your eyes and ears on the ground here?" "Yes, Ernesto," I said, giving him the name of the hotel where Marcy was staying, along with the numbers of her room, her lover's room, and Penny's. I also told him about Pablo Espinosa, the hotel manager, whom I had spoken to earlier. "You can do it?" "Yes, my friend, I can get everything you need," he said. "I take it you need audio, video, and photos." "Yes," I said, "all of that. And I'd like to receive daily reports if possible. Let me know if you need any spending money and I'll transfer it. I'll also send you their schedule for the next few weeks." "Sounds good," he said. "Do you need to do anything special with them?" I knew that Ernesto had friends in both high and low circles, but I was not yet ready to take such measures. "Not yet," I said. "I need information now. We have 6 weeks." "Okay, you're the boss," he said. "Let me get started and I'll be in touch." "Thank you, Ernesto. I really appreciate it." "I will thank you," I said, "and say hi to your family." Ernesto was married and had 5 children whom he loved very much. "I know it will," he said. "And thank you. I'll pass this on to Lupe and the kids." After we finished talking, I scanned Marcy's schedule, converted it to PDF on my phone, and sent it to Ernesto. After making sure he received the file, I put the phone away. A little later, Alan drove up to my house. He got out of the car and walked up carrying a large suitcase full of electronic equipment. We shook hands on the porch, and I let him inside. I watched as he pulled equipment out of his suitcase and began searching. Within 30 minutes, he found miniature wireless cameras in several rooms of the house, mostly installed in smoke alarms. All of them were sound and/or motion activated. There were cameras in almost every room of the house except the bathrooms. We also found several small microphones, and Alan discovered that our landline was also a listening device. "These devices don't have a long range," Alan said. "There must be a receiver around here somewhere, perhaps in the garage or attic." We searched the garage but found nothing. I walked him into the attic after I grabbed a flashlight and we looked around. Sure enough, in one corner of the attic, there was a box with a laptop connected to it. When we touched the laptop, it appeared on the screensaver. It was locked, and I didn't know the password. Alan checked it carefully. "It looks like this laptop stores all the audio and video that the cameras and microphones collect, and then uploads everything to the cloud wirelessly," Alan said. "Can you tell who this belongs to?" I asked. Alan inspected the box and found a sticker that read, "Property of Smith Investigations, 18277 West Main Street, STA." There was also a phone number on the sticker. How convenient, I thought to myself. "So what do you want me to do with all this?" Alan asked. "You want me to turn everything off?" I thought for a moment before answering. My initial reaction was to tell him to get rid of everything, but I had another idea. "Unlock the camera and microphone they put in my office," I said. "Leave the rest where it is. They want a video, I'll give them a video. This will be the most boring video they can imagine." Alan chuckled. "Okay," he said. We went down from the attic and came back down. Alan turned off the camera and microphone in my office, and then looked at the computer Marcy and I shared sitting on the desk. "Do you want me to check it too?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Let's check everything." I turned on the computer and watched Alan work his magic. Of course, Marcy had installed a keylogger on it the night before she left. Since I didn't use it, she had nothing to grab. After doing a thorough scan, he also found some spyware that she or her private investigator had installed. He cleaned everything up and ran another scan. "Looks like everything is clear now," he said. "Why do you think she went through all this trouble?" I asked Alan. "Well, if I were her, I'd say she's planning to set you up for something," he said, confirming what I already suspected. "Maybe she's planning a divorce and is going to take everything from you." "I hate to say it, Alan, but I think you're right," I said. "Can I give you some advice?" he asked, putting his equipment away. "Of course," I said. "If she hired a detective to install all this equipment, chances are he still has a key to your house," Alan said. "Eventually, he'll have to come back to get his equipment. If I were you, I'd change the locks immediately, and I'd change the code on your security system." "That's a good idea," I said. "I'll call the locksmith right away. Thanks for coming, Alan. I really appreciate all your help." After we said goodbye, I took out my phone and found the locksmith's number. I found one and called him. It cost me an extra $50, but it was worth it. The last thing I wanted was some private investigator coming into my house. While I waited for the locksmith, I sat down at the computer I shared with Marcy. I turned it on and logged in with her account. I wanted to find out what she's been up to lately and figured this would be a good place to start. I opened her browser and logged into her webmail. The letters were opened immediately without asking for a password. Apparently, I thought her credentials were already saved, and she had not changed the password as I advised. This was one time where I'm really glad she didn't take my advice. I usually don't spy on her computer use, choosing not to intrude on her privacy. But this was different. In my opinion, she declared war, and I was determined to win. I looked through her letters. Most of them were spam, but there were a few between her and Trey Cardoza, the doctor she now sleeps with in Bogota. Instead of reading everything at once, I did a search and found several email chains between them that went back over a year. Interesting, I thought. I selected them, then exported them and saved them to a flash drive so I could review them later. There were several letters between her and the children, mostly small conversations, nothing noteworthy. By the time the locksmith arrived, I showed him the doors that needed to be replaced. I let him go to work and went back to the computer. While looking through email threads between Marcy and her doctor, I found one with the subject line, lawyer. Out of curiosity, I opened it. The first letter was from her, in which she told Trey that she had just spoken with her lawyer, one Allison Hargraves, and had read the proposed divorce agreement and postnuptial agreement. "She talked me out of it, but I don't care now," she wrote. "I'm going to do this no matter what." "Are you really going to divorce Rick?" he wrote in response. "I thought you loved him. You said you were going to spend the rest of your life with him. What's going on?" "I love him," she replied, "and intends to spend the rest of her life with him. But now everything will be different. All these years he was an ignorant cuckold. Not anymore." "What are you planning?" he asked. "I have a letter that I will give to Leslie," she said. "I wrote to him in a letter that he should meet me in the lobby of the Ambassador Hotel when we return. There he will be given documents. He will be so upset that he will do everything to avoid a divorce. I will take him to my room and I will hand him a postnuptial agreement. He will have a choice: either agree to my terms or be destroyed in divorce." "Damn," Trey said. "You're cold. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Lol, she wrote back. So, what grounds are you using? He asked. Treason, she said. And I will have ironclad evidence on him, including video. I've already talked to Leslie. She's been into him for a long time. It was pretty easy to do. I told Rick in a letter that I give him permission to sleep with her for 6 weeks while we're gone. What he doesn't know is that I have cameras and microphones all over the house, and I have a private detective watching his every move. He just doesn't know about it yet. Says I can sue Leslie for alienation of affection if I want. So I'll get not only half of Rick's military pension, but also the house, half of all our assets, and I can ruin Leslie and her husband financially. So that would be it. It is in his interests to agree to my terms. Damn, do you think he'll agree to this? He won't have a choice, she said. I already told him in a letter that he can either take me back or leave. I doubt he will leave. What if he leaves? Trey asked. It will be his loss, she said. You said he was an ignorant cuckold, Trey wrote. How long have you been cheating on him? Years, she said. It started when he was in Korea for a year. I moved the kids back home and started working at the hospital. They were doing renovations at the time. I had to park at the Red Roof Inn, like so many others, and found that I could drive an hour or two ahead of schedule, meeting with another nurse and going to work. Of course, I had to stop when he got home. Finally, I thought, after all these years, I know the truth. And he never suspected? Trey asked. Well, we met in Hawaii mid-year, and I think he suspected something, she wrote. It caused a huge scandal, I tell you. But I managed to get us through it. That's why I know I can do it now. The only difference is that now he will know what I did. You are taking a huge risk, Trey wrote. This was the first and probably only thing I would agree with him on. Those who don't take risks don't drink champagne, she said. I hope you know what you're doing, he said. Don't worry, she replied. Everything's under control. This was the last letter in the chain, thank God. I'm not sure I could stand it any longer. I printed out the chain of letters and put it in a folder. By then, the locksmith had already finished the job and handed me 3 new sets of keys. I paid him for the work and gave him an extra $1.50 for the urgency. After he left, I decided to do the same. I turned off the computer, then went upstairs to change. Then I went to the bar for a hamburger and beer, stopping at the cigar store on the way. I hadn't smoked since I was in the army and felt like I needed something to keep me from knocking out someone's teeth. I couldn't help but notice the dark SUV that was following me. Whoever it was has been following me since I left the dead end. I didn't recognize the driver's face, but I remembered the license plate number and thought it was a private detective whom Marcy had hired. I tried to get away from him, but he continued to follow me. When I parked at Yancey's Bar and Grill, he stopped too. I got tired of this crap and got out of the car. I walked straight to the SUV and saw the man's face turn pale as I opened the door. Who the hell are you, and why are you following me? I growled. I don't know what you're talking about, the smaller man stammered, his eyes wide. Bullshit, bastard, I said. You've been following me since the moment I left the house. Are you the private investigator my wife hired to keep an eye on me? I don't know what you're talking about, he said nervously. You're a lying sack of shit, I said. And right now I'm fed up with lying bags of shit, so maybe I should blow your brains out right here. How about this? Look, I don't know what you're talking about, mister, he said. I'll leave, just don't hit me, please. I never want to see you on my street or anywhere near me again. Got it, bastard, I said. Next time I won't be so damn kind. I understand, he said. Sorry. I slammed the door and watched as he started the SUV and drove away. After making sure he was gone, I went inside and ordered a hamburger and a beer. Problems with a woman? The bartender asked when I ordered. Was it really that obvious? I asked myself. Yes, you could say that, I said. You know what they say, you can't live with them and you can't shoot them, he said, making me giggle. I finished my hamburger, which was pretty good, and drank my beer, which was also nice, and headed home. When I arrived, I grabbed another beer from the refrigerator, then went out into the backyard to enjoy a cigar and think. As I enjoyed my cigar, a plan began to form in my head. I took out my phone and Googled a few things that made me smile. I checked the calendar and chose a date. I needed to make a few calls to get this all up and running, but I saw no reason why it shouldn't work. At that moment, I received a message on my phone from Ernesto. Everything is ready. First report in the morning. If possible, send $250 for incidentals. The message was accompanied by a PayPal address. I opened PayPal and sent the money and a note. Thanks. I'll call you tomorrow. I have an idea. I received an answer almost immediately. We'll talk tomorrow. I finished my beer and cigar and went inside. I went upstairs to the bedroom I once shared with Marcy. Out of curiosity, I walked over to her nightstand and opened the drawer. There, close to the front of the drawer, were her rings. I looked at the smoke alarm where I knew there was a camera installed, then took off my ring and threw it into her ring box. I looked at the camera and showed my middle finger. Eat it, bitch, I thought. The next morning, I got up and got ready for work. Before I left, I checked Marcy's email. Sure enough, there was a new message with the subject line, "I've been spotted." I opened it and smiled as I read the note. I don't know how, but your husband found surveillance equipment. Attached is the video footage we received last night. He also noticed our investigator. Awaiting instructions, the short message said. I made sure it was marked as unread, then closed the email client. I went to work and somehow got through the day. When I got home, I checked my email and found attachments from Ernesto from the night's surveillance. I listened to their post-sex pillow talk. What do you think your husband is doing now? Trey asked. Probably sleeping with a neighbor, she said. I'll have the video tomorrow morning, then I'll send it to my lawyer. Enough about that, let's do it again. Whatever you say, honey, Trey said. I finished the video, closed the office door, then picked up the phone and called Ernesto. Senor Rick, he said when he answered. Thank you so much for the sundry money. It really helped. Did you see what I sent this morning? I saw it, Ernesto. Thank you, I said. Listen, I have an idea for a plan and I want to discuss it with you. See what you think. Of course, said Ernesto. He listened carefully as I told him my plan. Well, is this something you can help organize? I asked when I finished. I think so, Senor Rick, he said. This will require a little more money for incidentals. When do you want to do it? In 10 days, I said. 10 days? That can be arranged, he said. Let me talk to a few people and I'll get back to you. Just one thing. What? I asked. Why in 10 days? Why not earlier? He asked. This will be our 25th wedding anniversary, I said. I want her to never forget about this. You're a cruel man, you know that, Senator Rick, he said, laughing. I'm trying my best, Ernesto, I said. Contact me as soon as possible. Let me know what you need and try to keep it within reason. I will do so, Senor Rick, he said. See you soon. We ended the call and I went back to my contact list. There was another person I needed to reach out to, but I didn't know if she would be available or willing to help. I found her number, the one she gave me for her personal cell phone when we were in Iraq together. I took a deep breath and dialed the number. To my surprise, she answered the second call. Dieter, she said when she answered. Dieter, this Rick Weston, I said. Rick, oh my God, it's been so long, she exclaimed. How are you? It could be better, I told her. Listen, do you have a few minutes? Of course, she said. I was just about to sit down to dinner. I can call you back if I'm interrupting, I said. No, you're not interrupting, she said. It's just me and the cat these days. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. It's okay, she said. So, what's going on with you? She listened quietly as I told her little more than the Reader's Digest version of my story. Oh my God, she said when I finished. And you have proof of all this? Yes, I said. Emails, photos, videos, you name it. She also told me that you talked to her, said something about how we cared about each other. In fact, Let me read what she wrote. I would like to hear this, she said. I took out Marcy's letter and read it. The bitch came to see me and smugly said she took care of you there, and then left before I could ask what she meant. But when you came back, I realized exactly what she meant. I read, that lying bitch, Dieter said. I specifically told her that we were a team, that we looked out for each other, that we had each other's backs. She blurted out something like, I bet you did, and then slammed the door in my face. Look, I shouldn't have done what I did to you, and I'm sorry if I compromised you in any way. That's on me, and I'll have to live with it for the rest of my life. That's the only time I cheated on her. But none of that justifies what she did, in my opinion, I said. Rick, you have nothing to apologize for, she said. We were both shocked after that ambush, and to be honest, I don't regret it. It's not like we were planning and scheming behind her back. Of course, it was a little unprofessional, and it would have cost us both if we got caught. But I don't regret that it happened. So what are you going to do? I told her my plan and waited for an answer. She answered after a few moments. I like it, she said. I really like it. I have a guy in Colombia who handles one part, I said, but I don't have access to the other part. I think I can help you, she said. When do you want to do it? In 10 days, I said. This will be our 25th anniversary. Oh, you're so mean, she said, laughing. Okay, consider it done. This will be my anniversary gift to you. I couldn't help but laugh. She spoke again after a few moments. You know, I've thought about you a lot since then after Iraq. I've been thinking about you a lot too, I said. We were a great team there, weren't we? Yes, they were, I replied. You know, I haven't been able to connect with anyone like that since then, she said sadly. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. That's life, I guess, she said. Yes, I think so, I answered her. What are your plans? I've been thinking a lot about retirement lately, she said. I'm too old to be in the field, so they make me work at the desk filling out paperwork. Well, if you retire, I know a company that would love to hire you, I said. Would I work with a certain retired colonel? She asked. I can guarantee it, I said. Well, I guess there is something worth living for, she said. Rick, do you think it's possible? Could we contact each other again? I asked, finishing her sentence. I remember the time Marcy and I did this, but that was many years ago. Something like that, she said. You're not going to take Marcy back, right? Not after this? No, Marcy made her choice. Now she has to live with him, I said. And I won't let her ride off into the sunset with her doctor friend. Okay, she said, because I would really like to finish what we started in Iraq. I'd like that too, I said. But first I need to do a couple of things. I understand, she said. Just one thing, please. What? I asked. Don't make me wait too long. Please? I won't, I told her. Just know that if this works, my divorce will take a while. I understand, Rick. Just know that I'm here for you. If you need to talk, call me, okay? I will, I told her. It's good to hear your voice again, Rick, she said. Nice to hear from you again, too, I answered her. Well, I better go, she said. I'll get back to you, Dieter, I promise. You feel better, she said. We'll talk soon. We ended the conversation, and I felt better than I had in a long time. I think Marcy was right. Dieter was in love with me. And honestly, right now I felt closer to her than I had felt to Marcy in a very long time. The sound of knocking brought me back to reality. Damn, I told myself as I walked into the front room. I realized the knock was on the back door, so I went and opened it to find Leslie with a plate covered in aluminum foil. She was wearing the tiniest ripped jean shorts I've ever seen in my life. She was wearing a short t-shirt with an open belly. It was obvious that she was not wearing a bra. I thought you might be hungry, so I made you a plate, she said. I hope you like lasagna. May I come in? Of course, I said. I love lasagna. Just put it on the table, please. She smiled as she placed the plate on the table. I hope you like it, she said. Unless, of course, you see something else you'd like to try, she added. I admit I was tempted to accept her offer. But after what I found out and after talking with Dieter, I decided not to do it. Besides, I felt that I had a real chance with Dieter and wasn't going to risk it for a quickie with Leslie. As tempting as this offer may sound, I'm afraid I'll have to reschedule this for another time, I said. Her face suddenly changed, and she stood up straight. What's the matter? She asked. You don't like me? Marcy gave you permission, after all. I really like you, I said, and I'm sure she would agree. In fact, she has a camera there, I added, pointing to the smoke detector. And I'm sure she finds you attractive too. Why don't you wave and say hi to her? She was shocked and turned to the smoke detector. What? She asked. Are you sure about this? Oh, yes, I said. She installed cameras in almost every room of the house, and she has a private detective watching me. Maybe you too, didn't you know? No, I didn't, she said. Let's go to my office, Leslie, I said. I have something to show you. She followed me to my home office, where I gave her a printout of the email chain between Marcy and Trey. Her eyes widened as she read. When she finished, she returned the printout. Oh, God, she said. That bitch, I had no idea, Rick. Honestly, I didn't. I know, I said. She used you and played with you just like she did with me. What are you going to do? She asked. I have something in the works, I said. And yes, I will file for divorce. And I'm not going to do anything with anyone until this divorce is finalized. Do you understand what I mean? Yes, I understand, Rick, she said quietly. Can we still be friends? I see no reason why not, I said. But we can't go any further than this. Okay, Rick, she said. I'm sorry about everything. I hope you enjoy the lasagna. I'm sure you'll like it, Leslie, I said. Thank you. I walked her to the back door and watched her leave. I'll admit, she looked good in those shorts, but there was no way I was going to risk everything to get into her pants. After she left, I went upstairs and changed into my running clothes. I suggested that the lasagna, which was still quite warm, would be good when I returned. After my run, I showered and changed, then went downstairs and ate the lasagna Leslie left for me. It was full of cheese, mushrooms, and meat, just the way I like it, and it was delicious. I washed my plate, grabbed a beer, and walked into my home office, pausing only to make an obscene gesture to the camera in the front room. The first thing I did was check Marcy's email. I saw that she responded to the investigator, telling him to ease the pressure a little for now. There were no more letters from or to her. Then I looked at her finances. We had 3 checking accounts, one for each of us, and one joint account for paying bills. Most of what we earned went into a common account, but each of us kept 10% for ourselves. We started doing this soon after we got married. We also agreed to have each of us added to personal account subscription cards in case of an emergency, so I had no problem accessing her account. I noticed that she had saved up a fair amount over the years, but also noticed that she had paid a significant retainer to Allison Hargraves, the lawyer, and a significant amount to Smith Investigations. I also noticed a few purchases at Victoria's Secret. No doubt for her lover, as I have never seen her wear anything from them. From there, I did some research on Allison Hargraves. The name was a little familiar to me, but I couldn't remember where it came from. A quick internet search revealed that she is not only a family law attorney, but also an author. A few years ago, she sparked controversy with a book promoting the idea of female-dominated marriage. I've never read this book, but I decided to take a look at it. I also discovered that she was interviewed by the New York Times about her book. In an interview, she admitted that although she counsels anyone who approaches her, she only accepts women as clients and generally tries to attract them to what she calls the proud wife and cuckold lifestyle. I decided to do some research on this before making an appointment. From there, I went to Amazon and ordered the cheapest Kindle version of her book. I downloaded it to my Kindle and went out into the backyard with a beer and a cigar. After I sorted through all the psychological babble and nonsense, it became quite clear that Hargraves hates men and enjoys putting them into marriage conditions that struck me as torture and mental cruelty. This is who Marcy chose as her lawyer, I thought. This spoke volumes to me. I was distracted from Hargraves' bullshit when my phone rang. I looked and saw a message from Ernesto saying he could arrange what I wanted, but it would cost $1,000. He provided a bank account number that I could transfer the funds to and said he could arrange everything, ensuring that nothing could be traced back to me. I had a better idea. I walked into the office, opened Marcy's account, and transferred the money to the account Ernesto specified. She still had enough money that I doubted she would check it all. That way, I thought, if anything were traced, it would show that the money came from her. I responded to Ernesto, telling him it was done. I finished smoking my cigar and went inside to watch some TV and relax before going to bed. The next few days went by pretty quickly. I followed the same routine: get up, check the report from Ernesto, check Marcy's email, then go to work. Returned home, ran, showered, ate, checked email, drank beer, smoked a cigar, then watched TV before bed. I had no desire to talk to Marcy anymore, so I didn't care that she didn't call or text. I realized that I really enjoyed not seeing or hearing her, as the love I once felt for her was now all but gone. I only saw Leslie once after I showed her the printed email chain. It was the next day when I returned the plate. Vince invited me to stay for dinner, but I declined, saying I had work to do. He looked disappointed, but I was sure he could handle it. Personally, I was glad that Leslie stayed away too. This was one distraction I really didn't need. The only thing that kept me going was periodic calls with Dieter. I used to call her every couple of days just to say hi. We talked about many things: our lives, our hopes and dreams, even pets. We even talked about my children. The more I talked to her, the closer I felt to her. Eventually, I found myself thinking about her before going to bed and realized that I was falling in love with her. I was able to make an appointment with Allison Hargraves. When I arrived at her office, her secretary showed me in and offered me a cup of coffee. Being a military man, I willingly accepted the offer. Allison and I shook hands and I introduced myself. She seemed to be about my age, well-dressed and in good shape. I noticed the ring on her finger and wondered what kind of life her husband led. "So, I understand that you are going to get a divorce," she said. "Yes, it is," I said. "Your name is Weston, right?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. She frowned at something on her computer, then looked at me. "What is your wife's name, if I may ask?" she asked. "Marcy," I said. "It's short for Marcius." "I'm sorry, Mr. Weston, but I can't represent you," she said. "That would create a conflict of interest. You see, I already represent your wife." "Yes, I know," I said. "And I also know that you only represent women. Sounds a little sexist, if you ask me." She looked at me sternly. "If you already know this, why did you come to me?" she asked. "As you may already know, I am a retired Army intelligence officer," I said, "and I like to know as much as I can about my enemy." "Enemy?" she asked. "Is that how you see me?" "Pretty much the same way I see you and Marcy," I said. "I read your book. I also read the interview you gave to the New York Times. I know you love to involve your clients in your lifestyle. Is this what you did to my wife? Did you attract her?" "Mr. Weston, this is confidential information," she said. "Of course," I said. "Did you know that Marcy was going to Colombia for 6 weeks? And did you know what she planned to do during those 6 weeks?" "Again, Mr. Weston, this is confidential information, and I am not at liberty to disclose it," she said. I nodded. "I see you are married," I told her. She looked at her rings for a moment. "I found your chapter on controlling husbands interesting. Tell me, do you treat your husband the way you suggest in this chapter? Do you keep him in a chastity cage and force him to call you mistress while he serves you and submits? You humiliate him, controlling his every move and forcing him to watch you have fun with your lovers." "It's none of your business, Mr. Weston, and I think this interview is over. Please, you know the way out," she said. I smiled and nodded. "I'd like to say it was nice meeting you, Mrs. Hargraves," I said, standing up. But that would be a lie. I'm sure we'll see each other again. Goodbye. I walked towards the door and stopped to turn towards it one last time. By the way, I personally found your book disgusting. Have a nice day. I left her office before she could respond. The secretary looked at me with a smile as I walked out. I wonder if she heard what happened. Finally, the day of our 25th anniversary arrived. I had a lot of accumulated work time, so I took the day off. I knew it was going to be a busy day and wanted to be home to follow the developments. Early this morning, I received a message from Dieter saying that she was able to do what I asked. I waited nervously for news from Ernesto. Around mid-morning, I received a message from him, "Check your email." After turning on the computer, I opened my email client and saw that it had sent a video, so I opened it. The video appears to have been filmed from a point overlooking a dirt road where a temporary control point had been set up. I saw 3 SUVs driving down the road towards the checkpoint. As the vehicles approached, armed soldiers stopped them. They shouted orders to 2 people in the SUV before opening the doors. As I watched, the soldiers began to open boxes and rummage through what was inside. The next second, one of them shouted, and several more armed soldiers ran. They looked at the boxes, then began to move them to a military vehicle parked nearby. One of the soldiers pointed his gun at the driver's door and shouted an order. The door opened, and I saw Trey come out with his hands up. Marcy exited the passenger side, walking between 2 armed soldiers. They were both roughly handcuffed and placed in a military vehicle. A tow truck arrived, and the SUV they were in was hitched and taken away. The soldiers inspected the other 2 transports before finally waving them through. To say that I was shocked is to say nothing. I took out my phone and called Ernesto. "Hola," Ernesto said when he answered. "I take it you've seen the video." "I saw it, Ernesto," I said. "What the hell happened?" "Well, we got what you asked for. A little bit, just to have her deported. Unfortunately, my people weren't able to plant it on her," he said. "It turns out that her lover, Dr. Tao Trey, has been smuggling significant quantities of illegal substances for some time. The car already contained several kilograms in boxes marked as medical. My men saw things being packed and loaded, so they stepped aside. They didn't want to get involved with the cartel, and I don't blame them." "Me too," I said. "So where are Marcy and Trey now? Was she involved in this?" "They are both in prison," Ernesto said. "It appears she may have known about it, but exactly how much, I'm not sure. They have 48 hours to take it to a judge, and the investigation could take up to 90 days to decide whether to file charges. But judging by what we saw, I think it won't take that long." "What will happen to them?" I asked. "Does the consulate know about this?" "I'm sure the consulate in Bogota is already aware," Ernesto said. "It happened quite early this morning." "Watch this for me, Ernesto," I said. "I will, boss," he said. "I'm sorry it turned out this way. I know it's not what you expected." "Don't apologize," I said. "That's not exactly what I had in mind, but if she's involved in this with Trey, she deserves what she gets." We ended the call, and I immediately called Deirdre to let her know what had happened. She didn't seem too surprised. "Do you have connections to find out what's going on there?" I asked. "This is not my area," she said, "but I know the station master there, and I can call to find out." "Please do it," I said. "I'll call as soon as I hear something," she said. While I waited for her to call, I packed a trash bag and went around the house, putting away all the cameras and microphones that Pi Marcy had set up. I also went to the attic and took the receiver and laptop. I stuffed it all into the bag, not caring if anything broke, then set it down in the driveway in front of the garage. I called Smith Investigations. "Smith Investigations," a female voice said. "I'd like to talk to the big shit there, please," I said. Okay, sir. 1 second, please," she muttered. A few seconds later, I heard the voice of the man I had encountered earlier at Yancey's. "James Smith, how can I help you?" he asked. "This is Rick Weston," I said. "You remember me. We met in the parking lot of Yancey's the other day. Your client is in a Colombian prison. I removed all your crap from my house. It's in a trash bag in my driveway. If it's not there tomorrow morning, I'll throw it out with the rest of the trash. Understood? Yes, sir, he said. I ended the conversation, not caring what he said. Things disappeared the next morning when I went to work. I assumed Smith took them, but I didn't care if someone came and stole them. Moments after I finished talking to Smith, my phone rang. It was Dieter. I just spoke to the station manager in Bogota, she said. What did you find out? I asked. The feds in Colombia have been following Trey since he arrived in Bogota, she said. Turns out he's a distant relative of the man who runs all that shit. If Marcy is involved with him, she's looking at a long time in jail there. The judge assigned to the case is known to be especially harsh on foreigners. How long does she face? I asked. At least 10 years, she said. Well, I'd say if she's not ready for punishment, she shouldn't have committed the crime, I said. How much did they carry? According to my source, at least 20 pounds, she said. Damn, I said. You can expect a visit from the State Department soon, Dieter said. Let me know how the meeting goes. I thought so, I said. I'll call when I hear something. So, what do you plan to do now? She asked. Get a divorce, I said. I'm not going to stay married to a cheater. Okay, she said. After we finished talking, I called the hotel in Bogota where they were staying. Pablo answered. Good morning, Pablo, I said. This is Rick Weston. Can you put me through to Penny Washington, please? Si, Senor Weston, I will be glad to do this for you, he said. Penny answered the phone on the first ring. Hello, she said nervously. Penny, this is Rick Weston, I said. I was trying to contact my wife, I lied. Today is our anniversary, and I wanted to say hi. Do you know where she is? Is she celebrating with Trey? No, Rick, she's not celebrating, Penny said. It seemed that she was about to cry. What's wrong, Penny? I asked. Oh, Rick, that was terrible, she said. We were driving to the village, and we were stopped at a checkpoint. Marcy and Trey were arrested. The soldiers said they were transporting illegal substances. We were interrogated at gunpoint. I thought they were going to kill us. They took Marcy and Trey and took us back to the hotel. They kept asking, but we didn't know what they were talking about. They finally told us to stay in the hotel and not to go anywhere. I understand, I said. Sounds like a little adventure. What happens now? I don't know, she said. The Doctors Without Borders people told us to stay put for now. They said we could stay here for up to 3 months. I'm sure they just want to do a thorough investigation, Penny, I said. Have you told Josh yet? No, I didn't, she said. Have you spoken to him since we last spoke? No, Penny, I've had enough to do since you left on your little South American sex adventure, I said. But I plan to talk to him soon. Please, Rick, you can't tell him what's going on, she begged. This will kill him. Not as bad as your cheating, I said. Don't you think your husband deserves to know what kind of woman he has for his wife? I'm begging you, please don't tell him, she begged. Have a nice day, Penny, I said before ending the call. What she didn't know was that I already had a video of her and her doctor lover. I found Josh's cell number among my contacts. I decided to call him. Josh, he said when he answered. Josh, this is Rick Weston, I said. Do you have a couple of minutes? Yes, of course, Rick, he said. What's happened? I gave him a brief version of what was happening in Colombia, including the arrest, and offered to send him a video of Penny's activities. Yes, send it to me, he said. I suspected something was going on. Penny seemed different the last few times we talked. Sorry, Josh, I said. I just couldn't hide it from you, and I had enough problems myself. It's okay, Rick, he said. I understand. I'm sure it wasn't easy for you. So what will you do? I asked. I don't think I can get through this, he said. This isn't the first time she cheated on me, but I swear to God, this is the last time. Thanks for letting me know. We ended the conversation, and I sent him some videos recorded in Penny's room. My next call was to a divorce lawyer. I made an appointment in 3 days. A couple of days later, my boss, Bill Hastings, called me in. When I arrived at his office, there was a tall man in a dark suit. He stood up when I entered. "Rick, this is Thomas Herman," Bill said. "He's from the State Department." Tom extended his hand, and I shook it. "Tom, this is Rick Weston." "Nice to meet you, Mr. Weston," Tom said. "Nice to meet you, Tom," I said. "What can I do for the State Department?" "Well, Rick, your wife, Marcia, was arrested by the federal authorities in Colombia," Tom said. "She has been charged with trafficking in controlled substances." "What?" I asked. "Are you sure about this? She must be there with Doctors Without Borders. It's hard to believe she was involved in this." Of course, I lied. I thought it was better to put on a good face when playing poorly. "Is there anything you can do to help her? She's a US citizen." "I'm afraid not, Rick," Tom said. "You see, Americans in Colombia are subject to local laws. If they break the law, they are arrested by local authorities. We can't just go and bust them out of jail. We can monitor it, arrange visits, do welfare checks, something like that sort of. But we can't interfere in the legal proceedings there." "I understand," I said. "And one more problem," he said. "Which?" I asked. "Even if she were released today, she would not be able to return home," he said. "Looks like she's already on the no-fly list." "Is it true?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "It could just be an administrative error. It happens. But it's quite difficult to remove someone from this list." "So what's in store for her?" I asked. "Well, the laws in Colombia are some of the strictest in the Western Hemisphere," Tom said. "She could get up to 12 years in prison." 12 years old?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "After 7 or 8 years, the judge might give her parole, but she won't be able to leave the country and won't be able to work legally in Colombia because she's a foreigner. So she'll probably spend her entire sentence in prison. Of course, there are ways to help. But with her placement on the no-fly list, she's effectively locked there. She'll need money for expenses, legal fees, etc." He added, pulling out a booklet from his briefcase. "This booklet will explain how to do this. Make sure you follow the instructions. If you don't, it may delay receiving your funds. If you'd like, I can help arrange a visit. Is that something you're interested in?" "Yes," I said. "I have a few things to do. Can I call you in a couple of days?" "Of course," he said, pulling a business card from his pocket. "This is my direct number. Call any time during business hours." I took the business card and put it in my pocket. "Just one thing, Tom," I said. "What about the rest of the team? Are they being held too?" "Another person was arrested," Tom said. "The rest have been asked to stay in Bogota for a while. I really can't say more." "Okay," I said. "Thanks for your help. I'll be in touch." We shook hands, and he left the office. Bill motioned to stay. Once he was sure Tom was gone, Bill closed the door and turned to me. "This is not good, Rick," he said. "This could affect your safety and possibly your job. You need to get this sorted out quickly." "I understand, Bill," I said. I gave him a short version of what I already knew. I didn't tell him about my plan with Ernesto and Dieter. He listened, shocked by what he heard. "I have an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow. I intend to personally serve the divorce papers in Colombia." "Okay," Bill said. "Listen, you have a lot of accumulated work time. Take a couple of weeks. Do what you need to do and get everything in order." "I will, Bill," I said. "Thank you." I returned home and began going through Marcy's email, this time looking for specific terms or phrases. I got some results and took a look at the emails. Most of them seemed harmless, but I found one email chain that seemed promising. "Do you want to make a lot of money on our trip to Colombia?" Trey asked in a letter sent about 3 months before their trip. "Of course," Marcy replied. "What do you mean?" "Not here," he replied. "Let's meet in person after work, and I'll explain everything." Nothing else was mentioned for a week, then Trey sent another email. "Well," he asked, "have you decided?" Are you sure this will work? She asked. Of course, he said. I've done this before. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Okay, she replied. I'm in. Good girl, he said. Trust me, you'll like it. Bingo, I thought. I marked this letter and saved it as a PDF on a flash drive along with other letters. I then moved on to the video, this time listening to anything that might hint at a plan to transport illegal substances. I was replaying the sex scenes and caught a conversation between them the day before they were captured. I have noted the date and time on the video. Are you ready? Trey asked. Tomorrow is the big day. I think so, she said nervously. Okay, he said. The product will be loaded into our vehicle tomorrow morning. We don't even have to touch or see it. It will be in boxes marked medical. And you're sure we won't get caught? Marcy asked. I've been down this road many times, he said. There's never been a checkpoint there before. If everything goes smoothly, we'll do it more often. If everything goes well, by the time we leave, we'll have enough money to retire. Sounds good to me, she said. Bingo, I thought. I made a note of the video and saved it to a flash drive. After gathering my thoughts, I sent an email to the kids, asking them to join me on a Skype call tomorrow evening. Then I called Ernesto and told him what I had found. Damn, he said. What are you going to do? I'm going to look at the rest of the videos and letters to see if I can find anything else, I said. Tomorrow I will meet with a divorce lawyer and plan to serve her with the documents in person. Will you come here? He asked. Yes, that's my plan, I said. While I'm there, I also intend to hand over this evidence to the prosecutor. You can stay with me and my family if you want, Ernesto offered. I appreciate it, Ernesto, I said. I'm looking forward to trying Lupe's cuisine. He laughed. Trust me, you haven't eaten until you've tasted her food, he said. Call me when you're ready, and I'll pick you up at the airport. I will, I said. Let's talk later. I looked at my watch and realized I needed to send money to Marcy. I read the booklet Tom gave me. According to her, the State Department's Office of Citizens Overseas Affairs will create a trust fund for her, which will cost $30. Tom wrote a note at the bottom of the page saying that the trust fund had already been set up and the initial $30 contribution would be deducted from the money I sent. The Office of Foreign Citizens, in turn, will transfer the money to the embassy, which will forward it to prison authorities in Colombia. According to the booklet, the entire process can take up to 3 or 4 weeks. I decided to use Western Union as it was the fastest way to transfer funds. I already had all of Marcy's account information, so I checked her account, logged into the Western Union website, and sent all but $5. Once I was sure the money was gone, I took a bunch of trash bags and threw out all of her things, including our wedding album, not caring that anything might get damaged. I stuffed the filled bags into her car. I called her parents and explained the situation. They were devastated to hear about my divorce plans and tried to talk me out of it. I refused, saying that it was long overdue. They were also saddened to hear that she was in a Colombian prison. Are you sure Marcy was involved in this? Asked her father. Absolutely sure, I said. I even have evidence that I will give to the prosecutor. I just need to get her things out of here. Okay, Rick, we'll get her things, he finally said. I'm sorry it came to this. We didn't know it was that bad. We said goodbye and ended the conversation. Half an hour later, they arrived and took her car, along with the rest of her things. They were very upset to hear what Marcy had done, but they understood my reasons for the divorce. Please keep in touch with us, Rick, her mother said, hugging me. I will, Mom, I said. Her father and I shook hands, knowing that this was probably the last time we would see each other. I was exhausted, both physically and emotionally, when they left. I grabbed a beer and a cigar and sat on the back porch. I hadn't been sitting there long when the phone rang. It was Dieter, checking to see if I was okay. Hi, I said, answering the call. Hi, she said. How are you? It's been better, I said. Right now I'm enjoying a beer and a cigarette. I wouldn't mind either, she said. What exactly? Beer or cigars? I asked. Both, she said, which made me laugh. Do you smoke cigars? I asked. Sometimes, she said. How was your day? I told her everything that happened and said that I had an appointment with a lawyer tomorrow. It sounds like you were having one of those days, she said. Yes, it was a difficult day, I said, but hearing your voice makes me feel better. Okay, she said. By the way, I have an idea, I told her. Another one? She asked sarcastically. I laughed, then told her what I was up to. There were a few moments of silence when I finished, and I almost asked if she was okay. Finally, she answered. You know, that's the best idea I've heard in a long time, she said. Let's do it. You're in, I said. I'll tell you all the details when I get back from Colombia. I'm looking forward to it, she said. We talked a little longer before we ended the call. I felt much better after our conversation. The next day, I went to see my lawyer. I double-checked I had everything, then headed off. When I arrived at her office, I was escorted by her secretary and offered a cup of coffee, which I gratefully accepted. Lisa Hawkins was nothing like Allison Hargraves. She exuded confidence, and more importantly, she was open and friendly. She listened to my story, took notes, then reviewed the evidence, including Marcy's letter and printed emails. I also told her about Marcy being accused in Colombia. Well, that should make things a little easier, she said. How long does she face there? They told me until I was 12, I said. 12 years in a Colombian prison, Lisa said. It won't be easy for her there. What do you want to get out of it? Everything? She can keep her 401k, her clothes, and her car, I said. I've already sent most of her money there for her expenses. I want to keep the rest. I think it's possible, she said. Fortunately, you can file on the grounds of treason and cruelty in this state, and I think you've shown sufficient grounds for doing so. Also, judges take such things into account when dividing property. Just curious, how do you plan to serve her the papers? If you use the system, this could take weeks. I plan to deliver the documents in person, I said. Hopefully, I can convince her to sign them and be done with it. Okay, she said. I can have them ready and served within 2 days. Is that okay with you? Yes, I said. Also, what about Trey, her lawyer, and the hospital? You mean Allison Hargraves? She asked. Yes, I said. I was under the impression that Mrs. Hargraves convinced her to turn me into some kind of subservient cuckold. I tried to find out for myself, but she refused to answer me. Did you actually talk to Allison Hargraves yourself? Asked Lisa. Yes, I said. You are a very brave person, she said. Well, she is protected by the attorney-client privilege, so she is right not to reveal what happened between them. Also, although it is possible to file a breakup of marriage lawsuit in this state, in practice such suits almost never go to court. My best advice is to leave it and not waste money on them. I took her advice, and we ended the meeting with a promise to let me know when the documents were ready and submitted. 2 days maximum, she said. I thanked her, paid a significant advance, and left. Later that day, I spoke with the children on Skype. It was wonderful to see them, and I wish I could tell them better news. Hey, Dad, what's wrong? Kyle asked. Hi, Dad, Rhonda added. What's happening? Children, I have news that I wanted to tell you both at the same time, I said. Did something happen, Dad? Rhonda asked. Yes, I said. Your mother and I are getting a divorce. They both gasped in shock upon hearing this. Why, Dad? Kyle asked. Yes, Rhonda added. Did you do something? I told them a short version of the story and ended by telling them that their mother was in a Colombian prison. Are you sure she was really involved in this, Dad? Rhonda asked. Yes, Rhonda, I'm afraid it's true, I said. I have evidence that I will present to the prosecutor when I go there. Are you going to help the prosecutor? Are you going to help them put her in jail? Kyle asked. She broke the law, son, I said. I don't like it, but that's the way it is. I can't just turn a blind eye to it, and you know it. I know, Kyle said quietly. It's just the way it is. Confused, I asked. He nodded. I know, son. It's really confusing, and I'm sorry. But your mother made the decision to do it, and she got caught. We talked a little longer, and I answered all their questions. It was a difficult conversation, but by the end, they knew everything their mother had done and understood why I had to do what I did. I promised to send them an address so they could write letters to her, and we ended the conversation in tears. After we finished, I called Tom and asked him to arrange a visit the day after I received the documents. He promised to arrange everything, and we ended the conversation. Then I called Ernesto and told him about my plans. By the way, do you know who is handling the case? I asked. This is Ricardo Montoya, Ernesto said. He's a tough guy, trust me. Okay, when I arrive, I have proof that I will give to him, I said. Okay, Ernesto said before we ended the conversation. My last call was to Deirdre. She listened carefully while I brought her up to date. We talked for quite some time, and I felt better after our conversation. 2 days later, Lisa contacted me to say that the documents had been filed with the court and a copy had been prepared for Marcy to sign. I already had my things packed and my flight tickets ready to go, so I grabbed my passport and a few last things, then headed off. After I collected the documents from Lisa, I called Ernesto and told him that I was heading to the airport. Tom sent a message that the visit had been arranged. I sent a reply thanking him. Ernesto met me as soon as I cleared customs. We collected my luggage and headed to his car. Where to first? He asked when we got settled. First, I need to see Senor Montoya, I said. He nodded and drove off. When we got to the government building where his office was located, Ernesto parked the car. I'll wait here for you, Senor Rick, he said. I nodded and went inside. I found an office in Montoya, and the secretary stopped me. Can I help you, Senator? She asked in accented English. Yes, please. I would like to see Senor Montoya. I have information on a case he is involved in, I said. Do you have any information for me, Senator? I heard a voice behind me. I turned around and saw a well-dressed man standing in the doorway. You are Senator Montoya? I asked. Yes, it's me, he said. Who are you? Rick Weston, I said, holding out my hand. I understand that you are pursuing a case against my wife, Marcy. He shook my hand and nodded. Weston, he said, yes, of course. Please come in. He led me into his office and closed the door. So, what information do you have for me? I got a flash drive and handed it to him. On this disc, you will find a video of her and Trey Cardoza talking about transporting goods, which I assume refers to what was found on her, I said. There are other videos. You will also find email correspondence. I added a text file with her email URL and her credentials. Perhaps you will find something useful in these letters. He looked at me suspiciously before speaking. Do you understand, Senor Weston, that my job is to put her in prison for a long time? He asked. Yes, I know, I said. So explain it to me. Why are you giving me this evidence? Aren't you supposed to be helping her lawyer? He asked. When I didn't answer right away, he smiled and nodded. Ah, your wife had an affair with Dr. Cardoza, didn't she? He asked. I nodded. Yes, I said. I understand, he said with a slight smile. And you see this accusation as a way to get revenge, don't you? I understand. If I were you, I would probably do the same or worse when I found out that my wife was cheating on me. But I will not allow my office to be used for your revenge, no matter how deserved it may be. Senor Montoya, I understand how you could come to that conclusion, I said. Yes, I want my share of justice, but I intend to serve her with divorce papers. That's why I came to Bogota. I am also a retired Army intelligence officer and cannot turn a blind eye to breaking the law, even if it is my soon-to-be ex-wife. Besides, I work for an international company with an office in Bogota, and I would be remiss in my duties if I did not present to you what I know. Whether you use the information or not is your choice, Senor Montoya, I said. He nodded when I finished. Okay, Senor Weston, he said. I'll look at your evidence. How long do you plan to stay in Bogota? A day or two maximum, I said. I'm going to serve the divorce papers on my wife tomorrow, and hope to get her to sign them. Then I'll head back to the States. Where are you staying? He asked. I was invited to stay with a colleague who works in our office here, I said. I don't remember the address by heart, but I can give you my mobile phone number. No need, Senor Weston, he said. I'll see you before you leave. Welcome to Bogota. I nodded and shook his hand. Thank you, Senor Montoya, I said as I walked out. So, how did it go? Ernesto asked when I returned to his car. You're right, I said. Montoya, a tough son of a bitch. Ernesto laughed. You have no idea, he said. Let's go to my house. Lupe has been cooking dinner all day. We got to his house, and he settled me in a small guest bedroom for the night after meeting his wife Lupe and children. We sat down to dinner, and after Ernesto said a prayer of thanksgiving, Lupe served the food. I didn't recognize the dish she placed in front of us and looked at Ernesto. It's called bandeja paisa, he said. I've been eating this all my life. Bon appetit. I didn't know where to start, so I just grabbed a fork. The plate contained meat, scrambled eggs, rice, beans, half an avocado, chorizo, and something called plantain. I've never heard of this, but it turned out to be very tasty. By the time I finished the plate, I was already full. That was delicious, Lupe, I said when I finished. She smiled and thanked me for the compliment. When we finished, Ernesto and I sat outside with a cigar and a glass of aguardiente, or fire water. It was sweet, but had a strong kick, and I could definitely see why it was called that it burned the throat. We talked a little about this and that, nothing serious. Finally, it got dark, and we went to bed. After breakfast the next day, Ernesto took me to the prison where Marcy was being held. I couldn't believe the state of the prison. Noisy, crowded, and smelly. I met a man from the embassy, and we went inside together where we were shown into a small room. Marcy was already there, and she looked terrible. Her face was gaunt, her eyes were red and with dark circles. It was clear that she had lost weight. I also noticed that she was chained to the table. She raised her head and looked at me with sadness in her eyes. I sat down opposite her and opened my briefcase. I took out the package and put it on the table. You gave me a choice one day, Marcy, I began. It's either take you back or leave. I think you know the choice I made. She lowered her head and tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry, Rick, she muttered. I did not mean to offend you. Nonsense, I said quietly. You were acting conspiratorially with Leslie for several weeks before you left. You've been planning this for a long time. I know that you went to Allison Hargraves. I also know what you plan to do when you return to the States. You probably know that I found the cameras you installed in the house. I know you were planning to set me and Leslie up by pretending to be her friend and my so-called loving wife. You know, I loved you with all my heart for a quarter of a century. I did the best I could. I admit I wasn't perfect, and yes, I messed up once in Iraq. But it was in the heat of the moment. We almost died there. I swear to God, I never planned to cheat on you or hurt you the way you did to me. I also found a letter in which you admitted to Trey that you cheated on me the year I was in Korea. Do you remember the scandal we had then? All the time you swore that you didn't cheat. But that was a lie, wasn't it? And you have continued to lie to me since then. During our last phone conversation, you said, one time, if I don't mind. So, Marcy, I object. That last day is the day you were caught. Do you even remember what day it was? No, what day was it? She asked quietly. It was our 25th anniversary, I said. You didn't even bother to remember it, did you? Tears continued to fall from her face as I spoke. I wanted to say more, to cause her more pain and suffering. But I decided to get down to business. I only came here for one thing, Marcy, I said, pulling out the divorce papers. You need to sign them to end this farce of our marriage. But I don't want a divorce, she said. Another lie, I said. You hired Allison to prepare the divorce papers and were going to give me a choice, either become your submissive cuckold or destroy me through divorce. Face it, Marcy. We're done. I'm done with you. You'll be here for a long time, but I won't wait for you at home. Sign the damn documents, I added, holding out my pen. By the way, I've already sent most of your money here for expenses and legal fees. It will take a while for it to arrive, but it's on its way. You can keep your 401k, your car, your clothes, and personal items. Your parents have already taken theirs. The rest is mine. So, sign the documents, and it will be completed in 60 days, I said. Have you told the kids about this? She asked. Yes, he did, I replied. It broke their hearts to know what you've become. I gave them an address where they can write to you. I don't know if they will or not. She took the pen. Okay, she said quietly. You win. Where to sign? I pointed to the places Lisa had marked. She read while signing, then I signed, and the person from the embassy signed as a witness to our signatures. When we finished, I put the documents back in the envelope. By the way, I said, I noticed that you've already paid in full for your reservation at the Ambassador Hotel. I don't want it to go to waste, so I'm going to use it. Use it, she said. I obviously don't need it. Thank you, I said. And one more thing. I'm planning on inviting Dieter to join me. I thought we could finish what we started in Iraq. One time, if you don't mind. She looked at me with fire in her eyes. I shook my head. After what you did, don't even start, I said. To me, we're not married anymore. Enjoy the rest of your pathetic life. I got up and left, leaving her sitting at the table and crying. When we went outside, I saw Montana standing near his car. He walked over and shook the hand of the man from the embassy, then looked at me. If you don't mind, I'd like to speak with Colonel Weston alone for a couple of minutes, he said. The man from the embassy nodded and said goodbye, getting into his car. Montoya hugged me by the shoulder. Walk with me, Colonel, he said. I haven't been a colonel for a long time, Senor Montoya, I said. Please call me Rick. He smiled and nodded. And you can call me Ricardo. Once a military officer, always a military officer, right? He asked rhetorically. Ernesto speaks very highly of you. He told me a lot of good things about you. Do you know Ernesto? I asked. Yes, I know Rick, he said with a smile. We served in the military together for a while. Then he went to work for your Acme Global, and I became a prosecutor. You know, I looked at your evidence, and you were right. It's very convincing. It will save the government a lot of time, effort, and money. That's one of the reasons I decided not to charge you with criminal conspiracy, he said. I looked at him, shocked. Oh, don't be so surprised, he added. Ernesto told me what you were planning. As you might think, if your wife was caught with a small amount for personal use, she would probably spend a couple of days with us, then be fined and deported. Luckily for you, however, nothing illegal was purchased, and the money you sent ended up going to a charity for widows and orphans. The nuns said they were very grateful for your gift, by the way, he said with a smile. It was their account that Ernesto gave you. I couldn't help but smile. Between your stellar record and your voluntary cooperation, I have decided not to charge you, he said. However, I must warn you, if you ever think of doing something like that again, I will have no choice but to take action. I hope you understand. I understand, Ricardo, I said. Thank you. No, Rick, he said. Thank you. The information you provided will be very helpful. I understand that you wanted justice after what your wife and Dr. Dana Cardoza did. But trust me, justice is coming. I understand you are heading back to the airport. Yes, I'm going back to the States, I said. Well, Rick, if you ever come back to Bogota, maybe you'll stay long enough to be my dinner guest, he said. I'd really like that, Ricardo, I said. He stopped and extended his hand. Vaya con Dios, Rick, he said. I shook his hand and nodded. Vaya con Dios, Ricardo, I said. And thank you for everything. We parted ways, and I returned to Ernesto's car. Everything is fine? He asked. Yes, Ernesto, everything is fine, I said. But I need to go to the airport so I don't miss my flight. We got into the car and drove to the airport. When we arrived, he turned to me. Boss, I'm sorry I didn't follow your orders, he said. I couldn't do what you wanted. If you want, I will resign. Don't apologize, Ernesto, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you were the only one who did the right thing. I'm the one who should apologize for putting you in this situation in the first place. Perhaps I'm the one who should resign." "No, boss, don't do that," he said. "I understand how you feel, what you feel. Hell, if it were me, I probably would have smashed her head in and fed it to the fish. It all worked out in the end." "Yes, that's how it happened," I said. "Thank you for everything, Ernesto. I'll get back to you, and give my regards to Lupa and the kids." "Do you think you'll ever come back?" he asked. "Of course," I said. "Where else can I find a portion of band Hain pays?" He laughed, and we shook hands. "I'll contact you, Ernesto. Stay safe, and thank you for all your help." Dieter met me at the Ambassador Hotel on the day I was supposed to meet Marcy. Yes, we finished what we started in Iraq, and it was an unforgettable night. "You know, I filed for retirement," she said. "I was thinking about a career change." "About?" I asked. "What would you like to do?" "I thought about becoming a full-time wife and housewife," she said. "Is it true?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Do you think there will be a job opening soon?" I turned over and looked at her beautiful face. "You know, I think one will open soon. Would you like to apply for this position?" I asked jokingly. "I think I just served," she said with a smile. "She really did," I said. "And you know, I fell in love with you," she said. "And I fell in love with you," I said. "If it weren't for you, I don't know what I would have done." "So let's make this official," she asked, "even though your divorce isn't officially finalized yet." "Why not?" I asked. "If you don't mind." "Of course I don't mind, honey," she said. "Will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the world?" I asked. She smiled and kissed me. "Yes, Rick Weston," she said. "I will marry you. I love you." Marcy and Trey were tried in Colombia and found guilty. Both received a maximum sentence of 12 years and a very large fine. Trey was sent to one of the worst prisons in the country, an overcrowded rat hole that already held more than 200% of its design capacity. He didn't last long, maybe a couple of years. Marcy was sent to Buen Pastor Prison, the most famous women's prison in Bogota. She was a little luckier than Trey, but life was still very hard. She doesn't have many visitors, naturally, but someone from the embassy periodically comes to check on her condition and make sure she's okay. The children write letters and cards at least once a month, and they say she looks forward to the day she can be reunited with them. Penny and the others were finally released from house arrest after the trial and allowed to return home. Pregnant Penny and her doctor lover were met at the airport by a bailiff and were severely punished in their divorces. Both were fired from the hospital and had to leave the area to find work elsewhere. I lost touch with Leslie and Vince, but the last time I heard from them, they were still passionate about their lifestyle. Leslie, however, had to take a break after she became pregnant. They still don't know who the father is. I sold the house and bought a new one after Dieter, and I got married. She successfully transitions to her new profession. I've told her more than once that there will always be a place for her at Acme, but she says she's tired of all this spy activity and wants to spend the rest of her time creating a happy home for the two of us and her cat. That is, if you don't mind, I don't mind.